A dangerous envoy. The capital world of the Yllari Empire shimmered like a jewel in space. Gilded spires, translucent bridges, and crystalline towers piercing the sky. It was a world of elegance and power, and its people never let newcomers forget that. Sergeant Mason Briggs had seen war on 5 planets. He'd crawled through irradiated trenches, survived orbital bombardments, and strangled a warlord with a broken comms cable. None of that prepared him for his first assignment on Yllari Prime, guard duty for a princess who hated his kind. He stood in ceremonial dress uniform, hands behind his back, eyes scanning the throne room. Everything about this place screamed fragility masked as strength. Flower-shaped chandeliers, attendants dressed like peacocks, and courtiers who smiled with knives behind their teeth. Then she arrived. Princess Yllari Yllari descended the grand staircase with a cold grace, flanked by guards in golden armor. Her silver robe sparkled like liquid metal, and a faint glow marked the royal crest at her collarbone. The room bowed. Mason didn't. Her gaze swept across the room, dispassionate, assessing, until it landed on him. "You must be the human," she said aloud, silencing the chamber. "Yes, ma'am," Mason replied evenly. "Staff Sergeant Briggs, security liaison for the Terran delegation." Her lips curled slightly, the closest thing to a sneer. "They send a soldier to a diplomatic table. How charmingly primitive." Mason's jaw ticked. "We like to keep our knives close when dealing with empires, Your Highness." Whispers spread like wildfire. The courtiers waited for Yllari's wrath. Instead, she gave a low, amused hum and turned away. Later, in a glass-walled briefing chamber high above the city, Mason stood behind the human ambassador as the day's political exchanges droned on. Yllari presided over the proceedings, questioning human motivations with veiled contempt. They breed quickly, consume recklessly, and embrace conflict. "We must be cautious," she warned the assembly. Mason said nothing, but her words stuck like thorns. He'd heard worse. Earth had been dismissed as a backwater world barely crawling out of its cradle. But now they had jump drives, orbital fleets, and soldiers like him, hardened by necessity, not arrogance. When the session ended, Yllari approached him near the exit. "Alone. You speak fluent Yllari," she said, voice low, "yet you hide behind your superior." "I wasn't brought to talk, Your Highness," Mason replied. "Why are you really here, human?" she asked, her tone softening just enough to imply curiosity. "To protect the people who matter," he said, "even the ones who think we're beneath them." For a heartbeat, something unreadable flickered in her eyes. Then she walked away without another word. Mason exhaled slowly. He didn't care what she thought of him, but his instincts itched. Something was off. Too many palace staff watching the delegation, too many small anomalies. Closed doors where there should be none, data feeds that lagged by seconds, subtle changes in guard rotations. He'd lived through enough ambushes to sense the wind before the storm. That night, he couldn't sleep. He stood alone on the balcony of the guest quarters, overlooking the distant city lights. The wind carried strange floral scents and the soft hum of aerial trams. His comm crackled. "Briggs," came a voice, barely a whisper. It was Sergeant Rena, his fellow soldier monitoring palace security. "Talk. Something's wrong. Thermal patterns in the south wing don't match staff logs. Movement in servant passages. Too coordinated for servants. Eyes on the princess. She's headed to the masquerade hall. Same wing." Mason was already moving. He pulled a compact pistol from a case beneath his uniform and dashed through the back corridors of the palace. No alarms, no signs of alert. That confirmed it. Someone inside was helping cover the threat. At the base of the stairwell leading to the grand ballroom, Mason found the first body, a guard, throat slashed cleanly, hidden beneath a curtain. Footsteps echoed above. Then a scream. Mason ran. At the top of the stairs, he emerged into chaos. Guests in ornate masks scattered as masked figures, slim, quick, precise, moved toward a figure in the center of the room. Yllari. She stood frozen, surrounded by 3 assassins, her own guards already fallen. Mason didn't hesitate. He fired twice, dropping one attacker. The second lunged, blade flashing. Mason sidestepped, caught the assassin's wrist, twisted, and drove his knee into the alien's chest hard enough to hear ribs snap. The third turned on him, but Yllari moved. She grabbed a fallen guard's sidearm and fired, catching the last assassin in the shoulder. Mason finished the job with a single round to the head. Alarms finally blared. Yllari turned to him, wide-eyed but composed. A streak of blood ran down her arm. "You?" Later, Mason growled. "We got more incoming. We move. Now." He grabbed her wrist and pulled her through the hidden exit behind the throne, one he had scouted hours earlier, just in case. Behind them, the Empire shook, and in the shadows, more knives waited. Blood on marble floors. The hidden passage behind the throne was cold, narrow, and pitch black. Yllari stumbled once, then again, until Mason grabbed her hand and pulled her behind him. "Stay close and stay quiet," he ordered. "I'm not some frail courtier," she hissed, yanking her hand back. "I can walk." "Great. Then walk faster," Mason said, not bothering to argue further. Behind them, the muffled chaos of the ballroom began to fade. They moved through ancient stone corridors, lit occasionally by flickering emergency panels. These tunnels were relics of past wars, escape routes designed before the Empire's age of peace. Mason's boots thudded against the floor in a steady rhythm. He had memorized the palace's schematics, including the old servant paths that modern guards didn't bother securing. If the assassins were professionals, and judging by the precision of the strike they were, he couldn't risk the obvious exits. Yllari's breathing was sharp behind him. She was trying to mask the pain in her arm, but the blood soaking her sleeve betrayed her. She didn't complain. He'd give her that. They reached a rusted maintenance room and sealed the door behind them. For now, they had a moment to breathe. Mason knelt beside her. "Let me see your arm." Yllari hesitated, but then sat stiffly on a metal crate and extended her injured limb. He tore open a med patch and began cleaning the wound, shallow but angry. "You've done this before," she said, watching him. "Too many times," Mason replied. She studied him in the dim light. No arrogance now, just curiosity. "Why did you run toward the danger?" she asked. "You could have left. Save yourself." "Because I'm not wired like that," Mason said flatly. "You were the target. If you die, your empire spirals. We both lose. You care about the empire now? I care about preventing a war humanity can't afford." Her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, not quite a sneer. Pragmatic. And here I thought it was loyalty. "I didn't say it wasn't," he replied, meeting her gaze. "But I'm not your knight, princess. Just a soldier trying to keep you alive." She looked away, silent for a long moment. "Do you think my own people are involved?" she asked, voice low. Mason wrapped her arm with a final layer of bandage. That strike was too clean. They had access to guard rotations and palace schematics. Someone on the inside sold you out. Yllari's eyes turned hard. "Cowards. No. Traitors. And they're not done." He stood and began checking his weapon. 3 rounds left. He'd need more. Suddenly, his comm crackled. "Briggs, do you copy?" It was Rena's voice again. Static cut in and out. "Barely. Say again." "They're locking down the palace. Security's compromised. We've pulled out. The princess. She's with me." A brief pause. "Get her off-world. There's a safe zone near Mirthalis. Use the old shuttle routes. And Briggs, trust no one." The line went dead. Mason turned to Yllari. "We're not safe here. We move now." Yllari rose to her feet. "Where?" "There's an old diplomatic hangar 5 clicks from here. Undocumented in current maps. I'm betting the assassins didn't account for it." "You're sure it's operational?" "I'm sure I'm not giving them a second shot." Yllari hesitated. "Then lead, human." They exited the maintenance room into another corridor, emerging near the palace gardens, moonlit paths surrounded by thick hedges and ancient statues. Too quiet. Mason raised his hand, halt. He heard it too late. A blur of movement. Then a plasma bolt tore through the air, narrowly missing Yllari's head. Mason tackled her behind a stone pillar. 3 Xarii assassins emerged from the hedges, their bodies lean and insectoid, skin shimmering with chameleon-like scales. One hissed a command in a dialect Mason didn't recognize. "Can you run?" he asked Yllari low. "Yes," she breathed. "Then run." He shoved her toward the opposite path, then emerged firing. One shot caught the lead assassin in the chest, dropped him instantly. The others scattered. One fired a bolt that grazed Mason's shoulder, but he kept moving, leading them away. Yllari didn't freeze. She ran with purpose, weaving through hedges, climbing over barriers, using memory and instinct. She made it to the far wall, where a transport node stood half-buried beneath flowering vines. She hit the control pad. Nothing. Dead. Her fingers flew over the interface. Ancient code. She rewired it with surprising speed, rerouting power from dormant reserves. Behind her, footsteps. One assassin remained. He lunged. Yllari turned and fired with the pistol Mason had given her. The shot was clean. Her first kill. The body fell at her feet just as Mason stumbled out of the hedges, limping slightly, smoke rising from his jacket. "You good?" he asked. She nodded, breathless. He looked down at the smoking node. "You did that. Some of us studied more than court etiquette." Mason grinned. "Glad I brought the smart royal." The node whirred to life. A transport field blinked open. Mason helped her step in. "Next stop, Mir Thalis. Pray the shuttle still flies." And together, they vanished into light, while assassins swarmed the palace behind them. The jungle and the knife. The transport node reformed them at the edge of a forgotten shuttle hangar on the jungle moon of Mir Thalis, a lush, overgrown world abandoned since the Empire's last border war decades ago. Humidity hit Mason like a punch. Sweat formed instantly on his brow as he helped Yllari step off the platform. Thick vines had swallowed the shuttle bay, and crumbling pylons jutted out like the ribs of a dead god. "This is your safe zone?" Yllari asked, stepping carefully over tangled roots. "No one looks for royalty in ruins," Mason replied. "That's the point." They made their way to the overgrown wreckage of an old personnel shuttle half-buried beneath foliage. Mason climbed into the cockpit, fiddling with the ancient controls. "No power," he muttered. "She's dead." Yllari didn't respond. She was staring at the tree-lean, shoulders tense. "We're exposed," she said. "We need shelter." Mason nodded and gathered what supplies remained inside the shuttle. A half-working datapad, a survival pack, and a flare gun with one round. Enough to stay alive, maybe. By nightfall, they had set up a crude camp beneath a broken awning near the shuttle's hull. A small fire crackled between them, fed by dry bark and chemical starter from Mason's kit. The jungle around them chirped and roared with unseen life. Alien birds, night stalkers, and things even Mason didn't want to name. Yllari sat cross-legged, bandaged arm resting across her lap. Her silken robes were now ragged and streaked with mud and blood. She looked less like royalty, more like a rebel war fighter. "How do you know places like this?" she asked. Mason fed the fire. "Recon on fallen worlds. Earth doesn't get invited to safe planets. We learn to fight where no one else wants to go." She studied him, then asked, "How many people have you killed?" He didn't flinch. "Too many. Most of them needed it. Some didn't. War's not clean." "Why do humans fight so hard?" she asked softly. "Your world, your species, isn't the strongest, the smartest, or the oldest. And yet you survive." Mason looked at her across the fire. "Because we're stubborn. Because every inch we have, we earned clawing out of the dirt. Empires collapse. Ideals break. But when everything falls apart, a human will still crawl forward. Bleeding, broken, furious. But we don't stop." She was silent for a long time. "My father raised me to never bend," Yllari said. "He said weakness in a royal kills more than blades. But sometimes I wonder if pride is just another kind of blindness." "You're not blind," Mason said. "You just never had to see." He tossed her a protein ration. She caught it easily and ripped it open with her teeth. "Then show me what I haven't seen," she said. Over the next 2 days, they moved deeper into the jungle. The palace assassins weren't far behind. Mason had seen a Xarii drone overhead the morning after landing. They had to keep moving. Mason taught Yllari how to read the terrain, how to spot broken leaves, how to feel humidity shifts that meant nearby predators, how to walk silently. She was a fast learner. At one point, they crossed a shallow river where something massive moved beneath the surface. Yllari slipped on a stone, fell, and came up coughing and laughing, a sound Mason hadn't expected to hear from her. "You're enjoying this?" he asked, incredulous. She grinned through soaked hair. "It's the first time I've ever done something real." Later that night, they stumbled into the skeletal remains of an outpost from the last Yllari War. It was crumbling, half sunk into moss, but Mason's eyes lit up at the sight. "This," he said, "is how we survive." He pried open an old weapons locker, empty except for a plasma coil and a depleted turret battery. "Can we use it?" Yllari asked. "Not yet, but we'll make it work." As the jungle night closed in again, they reinforced the crumbling walls with scrap. Mason strung alarms, tied metal scraps to vines, rigged trip lines, and even set a trap involving Yllari's decorative belt and a modified shock cell. She worked beside him without complaint. "You're not what I expected," Mason said as they sat for a short break, sharing stale water and a protein bar. "And you're not the brute I thought you were," Yllari replied. "But I was raised to see your kind as dangerous, reckless, beneath us." "You weren't wrong about the dangerous part." She looked at him directly. "That's the part I've come to respect." The compliment hung in the air, surprisingly genuine. Suddenly, a sharp beep sounded from Mason's salvage datapad. "Motion, north quadrant. Approaching fast." He grabbed his pistol. Yllari reached for a length of sharpened scrap they'd shaped into a makeshift blade. "It's time," he said. Yllari nodded. "Then let them come." Together, they melted into the dark edges of the outpost. No longer a princess and a bodyguard, but two survivors ready for war. Fire in the veins of the Empire. The enemy came at dawn. 3 Yllari assassins, silent, armored, efficient, crept through the jungle toward the derelict outpost. Their body heat didn't register on sensors. Their blades could cut through hull steel. And they had one mission: eliminate the heir to the Yllari throne. They didn't know she was waiting for them. Princess Clara Velrin Yllari crouched in the shadows of a ruined wall, makeshift blade in hand, Mason's instructions repeating in her mind. "Don't move unless you have to. Let them commit, and strike like a hammer." 20 feet away, Mason lay belly flat beneath foliage, pistol aimed. He had only one shot left in the magazine, but that would be enough. The lead assassin stepped on the tripline. A metal shard sprung up and struck the Yllari's knee joint with a hiss. He hissed back, staggering. Then Yllari was already moving. She lunged from her hiding spot, slamming her improvised blade into the exposed joint under his chin. The alien's eyes went wide as he collapsed, convulsing in the dirt. Mason fired. One clean shot, center mass, into the second assassin. The third vanished into the trees. "Back!" Mason shouted, grabbing Yllari's hand. They sprinted behind the outpost wall as plasma bolts tore into the stone, melting chunks to slag. The third assassin was using range fire now, methodical and relentless. Yllari ducked behind Mason, panting. "They don't stop. They're hired killers. The only way out is through them." She looked at him, sweat streaking her face. "Then we finish it." Mason checked the battery coil. Barely enough for one pulse. "Cover me," he said. Before she could ask how, he darted out, moving low and fast, weaving between the ruined pillars. The assassin tracked him, firing, missing by inches. Mason dove behind an old console and yanked the depleted turret battery free. He connected it to the plasma coil, jamming the stripped wires into place. The charge flared. The pulse unit roared to life, unstable, overheating but active. He tossed it over the wall. The assassin paused. Then the coil exploded in a blinding wave of light and heat. Silence. Mason stumbled out, coughing through the smoke. Yllari was on her knees beside the assassin's body, burned, unmoving. "You did it," she whispered. "No," Mason said, gripping his side. "We did." They didn't wait. By mid-morning, Mason activated the long-range distress beacon hidden inside the old outpost comms array. The signal was low-frequency, masked as pre-Empire garbage code. Only a few Terran operatives would recognize it. Yllari sat beside him as he bandaged his bleeding ribs. "You'll need a hospital." "I've had worse," Mason muttered. "I suppose I should thank you," she said, awkward. "You already did, when you took the knife and didn't run." She hesitated. "When we return, everything changes. My father will want revenge. He'll demand blood. If he learns a Yllari counselor helped the assassins, he'll burn half the palace to find out who." Yllari looked at him, serious now. "I don't want that war." Mason nodded. "Then stop it. Start something better. You think I can? I've seen what you could do in 2 days with a knife and a ruined bunker. Imagine what you could do with a throne." She stared at the jungle, deep in thought. The extraction shuttle arrived at sunset. It came low and fast, cloaked until the last second. A human pilot in a black flight suit dropped the ramp. "Sergeant Briggs," she called, "and our guest." Yllari straightened as she stepped aboard, regal once more, even in torn clothes. But now there was something different in her bearing. Not arrogance, not cold pride, strength, earned. 2 weeks later, Yllari Prime. The palace had been purged. Guards rotated, advisors interrogated. One counselor vanished under suspicious circumstances. The official story spoke of a terrorist plot from outside the empire. The truth was whispered in corridors, never spoken aloud. Yllari stood before the High Council, now wearing battle gray ceremonial armor. Her voice rang clear across the hall. "We nearly destroyed ourselves from within, but we were saved by an outsider. A human." Gasps rippled through the chamber. "He stood between me and death. Not because of loyalty to our bloodline, but because it was the right thing to do." She turned to where Mason stood in formal Terran uniform, healed, calm, and watching her like a soldier on watch. "I named Sergeant Mason Briggs, protector of the crown and envoy to the Yllari Empire. Let it be known, humanity is no longer the overlooked shadow at our borders." Mason blinked. That was not in the plan. The chamber erupted with noise, some outrage, some approval. Later, when they stood alone on the high balcony, Yllari joined him, silent for a long moment. "You don't like politics," she said. "Not built for it. But you're loyal and practical. That's exactly what we need." Mason chuckled. "Careful. I might start thinking you actually like me." She turned to him. "I respect you, Mason Briggs." Which, for me, is the first step. They stood in silence as Yllari Prime's twin moons rose behind them. 2 worlds changed by blood, fire, and choice.